Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Welcome back to Wicked Honest True Crime Fridays.
I'm not going
And
to
we
say the
are
episode number.
okay. Yeah, we gave that up. You gave that up a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really excited. We have a great show tonight. I'm beyond excited. Lots of work happening. The vigil's coming up on September 12th for Sue, 12 p.m. Constitution Beach in East Boston. I started sending out the press release to just content creators and things, people that have covered Sue's case and podcasters. I'm going on a I wonder if you guys have to know. We talked about this podcast on the show when Nunzio Orlando was on, our organized crime cop, retired Mass State Police investigator. We've had on a couple of times. Empty Frames. They are these two gentlemen, Lance and Tim, who I became obsessed with when they started the podcast Missing Mara Murray many years ago. And I was, as Carrie, I was nuts, boots on the ground, searching for Mara Murray up in the woods of New Hampshire with the team. I was talking to Lance about it, and he was laughing. And yeah,
You're
they got
showing
me.
you're showing you're crazy. You're showing you're
I'm showing
crazy.
my crazy, yeah. And I have the picture to prove it. I have to send Lance. But Tim and Lance have the podcast Empty Frames. It's a little bit older now. They still pop on when there's something new about the Gardner heist. Any information, it's excellent. And this, we all know the Sue case. There was a story that tied those cases together a little bit. Go back in that episode with Nunzio. But I'm going to be on their podcast. They do they have a missing person. I think they have an private detective agency. They help find missing people. They are Crawl Space is their platform, and they have a bunch of podcasts. That Missing Marmar, Empty Frames, Missing in Crawl Space is the I believe it's the overhead, the over, like, whatever they, when you start a podcast company, and
Hmm.
it's called Crawl Space. But anyway, I'm going to be going on them soon, and hopefully it'll air before the vigil. And that's the point. They are excited about Sue's case. They're local guys, so that'll be cool. And the district attorney we're hoping he's going to come. He has knowledge of the vigil, and also the current investigators, old investigators. Lots of people say they're going to attend. The family, the media, so all of that. Really excited. So, Carrie, we're beyond thrilled to have this guest. I feel honored because his reputation just precedes him, and he has been following what we're doing with the suitcase. And as you guys know, I'm writing the book, which is seems like it's never going to get written because things keep changing. There's so much traction happening. I have all kinds of new people I talked to and reached out to yesterday, and new leads and all this stuff. So I have to keep editing and editing. So we're sort of really just working on the investigative piece, and I'm just taking notes and going little by little. But this guest has followed what's going on and is interested. He's a local guy, and he's not just a guy, he has an extensive background. I'm going to do the quick disclaimer, and then I'll get into his
I was just
background.
going to say, why don't
Then
we
we'll
do the
bring him on.
disclaimer, and then just in case somebody's jumping in for some random reason in the middle of our episodes, we're reviewing, or we're I mean, I don't even know. Reviewing it is not the right word, but we're talking about the Sue Taraskiewicz case. Die.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify too. Crawl Space with Tim Polari and Lance Reinstierna. I'm not going to say his name correctly. I'm sorry, Lance. But Crawl Space is the podcast. It's a true crime and culture podcast, and explores unsolved murders, cold cases, serial killers, paranormal events. Really cool. So, but I've been following these guys forever, and so I'm excited to go on the show.
I
I just
loved
wanted to.
listening to Lance too on that one, the Mara Mari one. He was great.
They were both great. They did an
Yeah.
excellent. I mean, people were hooked. That blew up. It got me up in the mountains wandering around. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so obviously we're talking about Susan Taraskiewicz, 27-year old woman from Saugus, Massachusetts, was found in the trunk of her car in 1992 in Revere, Massachusetts, my home city, on the North Shore. She was on a billboard for many, many years, and we can tell, Carrie, by the Facebook group and what's going on, that this billboard and Sue's case stuck with on the North Shore. This guest coming on included. and people are not forgetting. People are talking, lots of action, lots of traction happening. And if you have any information, please call Mass State Police. There'll be a banner across your screen. And this case is still very active. Take that. I do know that. Take that to the bank. So, disclaimer, we are just talking this case through in real time. Please correct us if we make any errors. We're spitballing with each other. We're talking all kinds of people, all of that. Everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Names will be changed if they're not already out in the public or they don't have permission to speak. We don't have permission to speak their names. Anything that's in public filings, we will say. We're just trying to be real careful of that. And reach out if you have any information, any questions. We're here, and lots of people have.
I would just wanted to say, if you don't know, that it's free to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. You just have to have a name and password to log in, but it doesn't cost anything if you become a member and spread the word, share the podcast, like, subscribe, all of those things. It helps with the algorithm. It helps get the word out there. It helps the popularity of the podcast to get the word out there. So like, subscribe. Again, it's free. The Facebook group, what is the actual, I never can get the name of it right, but it's the case and discussion of Sue Taraskiewicz.
Case discussion and awareness.
And awareness of the Sue Taraskiewicz. Over 2,500 followers.
2,600 now.
What is it?
2,600.
Oh, 26. Yeah, last time I looked, it was just about 26. I didn't want to jump the gun. But yeah, and I mean, not only that, but tens of thousands of likes on the posts and things like that, and comments and things like that. So if there's 2,600 people in the group and only 600 subscribers to Wicked Honest, the people in the group should be watching the podcast if they're following along. And if they're following along and watching, they should subscribe and definitely at least hit the like button. It helps with the algorithms. It helps get the word out there. If we want to get the popularity and gain the traction, we need to promote the platform that is talking about it.
Yeah, come on, guys, do better. Do better. Come on.
Yeah, 2,600 members in the Facebook group, and we have 600 subscribers on the podcast. That should definitely be far higher than that.
Yeah.
We know people are following along and whatnot.
If you want justice for Sue, this is a way to do that because it gets more information out there. It gets the show out there. So anyway, we have just thrilled. So we have Mark O'Toole on. He is retired Lynn PD. I'll let him tell you his credentials, but he is, wow, he's also an attorney. I'll let him tell you his credentials, but I know he's been involved in over 100 homicides. He is very revered across the North Shore. Some of the
no pun intended.
What?
No pun intended.
Oh, revered. Yeah. Some of the investigators and police that I talk to, they are really excited when they have nothing but good things to say about Mark, and they're just excited to even know that he's involved in this, and it is exciting. So without further ado, we will have Mark O'Toole on.
Hello, ladies.
Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on.
Okay. Happy to be here.
So tell us, I don't want to get into detail. I want to let you tell us a bit about your background in Lynn PD and beyond.
I grew up in Lynn, and I was appointed to the Lynn Police Department in 1986, and did my time in the patrol division, fortunate enough to be promoted several times. My longest assignment began in 2008. I was assigned as the captain of detectives for the department, overseeing all investigative operations. And I served in that capacity until 2022, so nearly 14 years. I was promoted to deputy chief 2022, which I still oversaw investigative operations, but also had patrol operations as well, approximately 150 officers under my command. And I retired last July.
Very cool. And Lynn is not an easy city to a police officer.
Lynn is obviously a city. We have very thickly settled, much like Revere is in other cities. We take on a lot of low-income folks, and with that comes desperation, comes crimes, and it's constant challenges. Again, being an urban city, funding is always a struggle in staffing and having sufficient personnel is always, again, a challenge for us to investigate crimes.
And when did you become an attorney?
I became an attorney in 1998. I began law school in 1994, did 3.5 years, and took the bar and passed in 1998.
Very
And I'm always
Very-
impressed by people that have they went to school for so long and then they have like dual careers and dual degrees and I mean, nursing school was enough for me. I'll never,
yeah.
that's it.
So what made you want to become an attorney?
I was just intrigued by the mechanisms of law. It obviously has a relation. We had a couple of attorneys within the police department, and
Yeah.
I took a shot at it, was admitted, and I always, law school's reading cases, reading stories, which if we didn't have math and science, I would have been, a genius level. But those were challenges to me. I enjoyed that aspect of it, the civil, the property. And although it was I would call it a grind, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience.
Amazing.
Really impressive. So let's get down to it. What got you? I mean, obviously you're from the area, but tell me what got you interested in this case, what we're doing. Tell me that story.
In closer ties to this case, I began dating my wife in June of 1992, and Sue was obviously murdered in September of 1992. She had went to Saugus High with Sue, and wasn't a close friend, but knew her. Always said she was a nice person. The story is very relevant, obviously, in the Boston media outlets. Sue was from Saugus, so our local paper, the Lynn item, covered it extensively. So I knew some about it at that point, but I was a patrol officer at that time, so didn't have any involvement in the case or know any facts about the investigation other than what was in the media accounts. Then obviously I retired last year, and on Facebook I saw your posts on it, and I was always impressed when we can keep these older unsolved cases alive, and doing that now with social media and advances in technology, if we can keep those cases relevant, and it gives hope that they can ultimately be solved and someone held accountable.
Yeah, and we're seeing that all the time with advances in DNA and even just talking about it and people coming forward that might have been afraid 34 years ago, but now they're ready to say something. And seeing on Facebook or hearing people talk about it, we're seeing a lot of movement with that. I mean, I have people reaching out all the time talking to me and who do we call and this, that. So I mean, we're hopeful.
I know the investigators did a ton of work over the 34 years, and obviously crossed investigators and district attorneys, assistant district attorneys who've retired, and the case got passed along. So there's a lot of work that was done there, a lot of information gathered, and they may just need a couple of extra pieces to push it over the goal line for a potential prosecution.
I want to rip the Band-Aid off, Mark. Do you think this is a solvable case?
I do, again, caveat without knowing all of the information obtained. I've watched all of the podcasts, so there is a lot of information. It's a very difficult case. First of all, we had a young woman who disappeared from work at the airport. There were 30 plus hours that whoever did this to her had the opportunity to destroy evidence, create alibis, things like that. The actual scene is unknown. So it was a challenge from the beginning, just knowing what I know for the investigators when she was discovered. But I do think it can be solved. There were a lot of people who did provide statements and what this may have been surrounding. And I don't know if, again, forensics back then versus what we have now could play a role in that. I don't know what was obtained as any evidence, but we obviously have the DNA technology today, genetic DNA technology. So those things are optimistic. Again, using the grand jury process. I know there's some grand juries held on this. That's not to preclude future grand juries and persons giving testimony that can push this over. However, it's going to be corroborated, placing someone at the scene, and that could be done using previously obtained information.
Let me, speaking of the DNA, so how would you approach, and you and I have discussed this a little bit, but so if they have DNA, let's say they got DNA, how would you approach, obviously, if they had DNA, we don't know. We don't know if it's DNA. There's been many rumors and things said that at the time they did not have DNA when it was first investigated and all that. That's been told to the family. That's been told to a lot of people. And so it stands to reason possibly later on they ran evidence as technology advanced and then got some DNA possibly. But let's just, I'm saying this hypothetically, but let's just say I guess not, because I know a little bit of something. How would you approach now? So say you have DNA, it's been run, nothing's happened. How would you approach that as an investigator? When would you yearly say, would you follow the advancements in DNA? Would you call the crime lab yearly or set a time? Or how would you approach that?
I think we would defer to the expertise of the crime scene personnel on what they have. So we say we have DNA, we have evidence. So we know we're likely going to have Susan's clothing still retained. At autopsy, they would have taken fingernail clippings, whether there was a struggle. There may have been blood samples taken from the vehicle. So we have evidence, and you don't know what you have for evidence, and investigators, I'm sure, probably did this, and meet with the assistant district attorney, meet with the crime scene personnel, look at the evidence and see if there's something possible to analyze to obtain. Again, what we're looking for is a suspect profile on that. Unfortunately, sometimes there may be small amounts of DNA that can be exhausted during testing that you may not get a profile on. That, again, that sample is used up, so to speak. But there may be areas of clothing, there may be new information that comes in that can be processed for either touch DNA evidence or blood DNA evidence in the case. As far as timeline, again, we can look at it and coordinate with the crime scene services personnel on what they've examined. Again, when they've examined it, there's no, if it was done 10 years ago, I'd want it done again now. If it was done 2 years ago, probably not. If they got a suspect profile, but it didn't identify anybody, and I'll give you an example of a real case that happened in Lynn. We had 2 women murdered in 2008. We had a suspect profile from the scene. It was entered into CODIS, the criminal offender database, did not come back with an identified suspect. A year later, a detective re-entered that into CODIS, came back with a hit on a subject who was arrested in the meantime for a crime in another community. That led to that identification, and that subject ultimately pled guilty to 2 homicides.
That's great.
I have is the evidence that they have or had or got a secret? There's no list of, coming from a lay person who's out here, because I see some of the questions online, I see some of the questions on the Facebook page, and we don't know what, obviously they keep things close to the vest because it's unsolved and they want to be able to use it. But as Diane has said, it's 35 years has passed. Maybe it is time to release some of the things and let the public know what has been done and what hasn't been done and whatnot. But so say they collected a whole bunch of stuff. I would assume that Susan didn't drive the car herself. You never know. But regardless, whoever killed her, I'm presuming, was with her. So I'm assuming they did a real good canvass of the car. That includes, like, my hair is everywhere. I could never get away with murdering somebody, even if I had a hairnet on. Like little tiny hairs, fibers, like off of the seat of a car that back then was probably not leather seats, probably like velour microfiber seats that they get stuck in and things like that. Skin DNA, like touch DNA. So they have the whole car. They have everything Sue was wearing. They have all of that stuff but it's all,
You don't know what they have.
that's my question. So like, is there ever a world in which we find out what they have? How do you ask for exhausting tests or tests that maybe haven't been done or rerun when you don't know what they have? Or we're just going in and saying, hey, can you run what you have again? You know, it like, how does that work when you're on this end of it trying to work a case and you're not privy to the information that they have?
I guess your question is, do we want to, for my case, would I want to release what evidence I have? And I think my answer would be no, for a variety of reasons. We say we had the suspected murder weapon, and we released that, and we would have someone later in come in and say it was a hunting knife. Now that information would be tainted by being given out.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so giving those things out, let's say we do get a DNA profile, and let's say we did identify a suspect, and sometimes without admitting that someone was present at a scene or committed a crime, a denial is just as good as an admission. Let's say we had someone's fibers here and there in Sue's car, and you interview them and say, I'd never been in the car. So we have undisputable forensic evidence that they're lying. So that kind of goes to the weight of the evidence.
So then how does that work as far as, I mean, so as far as Diane goes and kind of the people that are kind of dedicating all this time and effort to move forward with this kind of stuff, like if we're
like podcasts and writing a book, you mean, like things like that?
Well, I mean, just from an investigative point of view, where you're trying to help the investigation along and things like that. And
they didn't ask for our help. We just inserted ourselves.
I understand that. But where you may have talked about maybe crowdsourcing or things like that for DNA testing and things like that. It's like, what avenue do you go down to? You talk to the investigator right now and say, we have these funds, or I'm just hypothetically saying, we have this we have all of this help, that we have a DNA place that's willing to donate their time to retesting anything you want, you know, and then just kind of leave that on the table with them and hope that they do it.
Just from my experience, again, the technology, the costs have come down. Anything relevant to solving a case, and again, from my experience, that will be approved for testing.
Yeah, and you've been the third person that has said that, so apparently the cost isn't as much of an issue as I thought.
It used to be the cost and the number of labs, and I guess the manner in which to do this is, I guess, greatly been enhanced, and it can be done for lower cost and in more places.
How do you feel about, like, coming off what Kerry said? So if you're working a case and then you have someone like me that comes around, I'm writing a book and doing all this stuff. How do you personally feel about that if you're working on a case, if that was happening?
I think it's a good thing. I applaud that the case is still being in the spotlight, so to speak. But you also have to caution on protecting the integrity of the investigation. You may have to go to trial. The person or persons responsible are going to have a competent defense attorney, and they're going to challenge all of these things. And the prosecutor is going to have to overcome all of these challenges. Now, if things are released in the media, the defendant's attorney could say, well, you're only doing this, you're only saying this because it was out in the media. You want to have, if it's a statement, a corroborative statement or physical evidence, that these are things that only the suspect or someone close to the case would know. Those are important. Also, that there's probably defamatory information in those, that accusatory things like that again, you wouldn't want to run the risk of hamstringing an investigation by putting things out that are not corroborated and not in public documents. There may be notes, there may be theories, things like that. You wouldn't want out there to compromise the case.
There's a big trust. There's a big trust you have to have as a family member or someone connected to Sue, or in any case that the investigators are doing all of the things, like, as lay people, where all the things we've seen, we're like, why isn't this done, and why isn't this done, and obviously we spoke about how this has been investigated more thoroughly than we probably thought in the beginning, and we've been proven definitely wrong about that. Where there's some disconnects and technology and a bunch of chefs in the kitchen type stuff, yes, but like when you're bringing all of this information in and you kind of have tips coming in and you're passing them along, and then you just kind of, okay, you give it up to them and you don't get the follow through to find out if they're actually doing the testing, or there's a lot of trust that has to go into
Yeah,
the
I think that's a struggle too, because obviously you have so many good investigators, but then you guys, there's no real set of rules because every crime is different too, right? So sometimes I think you might feel more apt to give a little bit more information to the public than other crimes, because something might be, for whatever reason, you have different approaches. So
like bait
as a
or something,
family
who
member,
knows?
a family member or even us or whoever of a victim, and then you just have to, you're the lead investigator of the case, and you just have to go, oh yeah, just trust him. And then you say, yeah, we're really working it hard and we're doing all we can, but I can't tell you anything. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, that's really
Well, and we're
hard.
coming off a world where MSP is having a ton of problems. We just came off the Karen Reed case. We have cops like Michael Proctor, who wasn't an MSP, but what's the difference, really? A cop is a cop
He
in
was MSP,
our
wasn't he?
eyes. Huh? He is
Michael-
MSP.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I was thinking he was Canton PD. I apologize. But, we're coming off of stories like that. So it's hard to just be like, okay, well, they have all the information. I'm sure they're doing all the things. And I don't want to discredit them. Hopefully they are doing all the things. But it's definitely a trusting,
No,
like you said.
I certainly understand that. And for families, I've met with families, and I looked at, when I was assigned to detectives, all of our unsolved cases. I put them in binders. I put to-do lists in there, and I wanted to set them up where if 20 years from now a call comes in or evidence comes in on a case, an investigator can pick that up and in a short time know exactly what's going on with
That's
the case.
awesome. That's
And
awesome.
also reached out to as many family members as I could. So it's appreciated by them when I'm calling them versus them calling me asking what's going on. And I would share what I could. I would generally get, I'd have them in to interview if I could, and what they've heard, and tell them what I've could. We've had these interviews with DA's office personnel. Sometimes you have to tell them there are no leads at this point to follow up on. And that certainly isn't what a family wants to hear, but I wouldn't lie to a family either.
How do you approach in, say, this case, right? So you had, obviously, I mean, I always joke and I call him number one guy because Bob Murphy worked this case for almost 20 years, right? And he was in the media and he knows this case inside and out. And obviously I'm not taking away from the lead investigator currently working it or prep, but Bob Murphy became the sort of the face for this a little bit because he was in the media a little bit and put it in like sort of a new approach. And I do know he worked this really hard, but so when he retires or he moves off the case, and then there's the handoff to the new investigator, are you at liberty now as the new investigator to just do what you want? Do you start from the beginning and is there some type of handoff that you're supposed to follow, or or is it just you do whatever you want with it and you pick it up?
I'm sure each agency is different on how they do this. Lynn PD, we don't have a formal cold case unit or investigator. The resources don't allow for it.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there are new cases that come in all the time, and you have to put the older cases down if you're working them. But I always put to-do lists in and crossed off things that need to be done, because you have to come back to them at some point. But resources and caseloads dictate frequently or how vigorously you work the cases. I've had time to work some of these cases with police investigators, travel throughout New England on these cases. But if a triple shooting comes and we've got a drop that for the time being and kind of respond to the present.
Don't you think it's so important to have a cold case unit in larger towns or cities, or just because, as you said, the new cases come in, or even just a cold case is just so specific to a cold case like unit. And I know that the MSP does have that, but do you approach things, because Marlene, I know Sue's mother, in her brain, she says, my daughter, this case is 34 years now. So she has a legitimate question in, can this be a priority? Because let's face it, the witnesses are dying, evidence is disappearing. The longer things go out, this is really a challenge. So that's a legitimate question. But do they approach cases as also, even in the cold case unit, what's the most solvable first to the least solvable? Or is that how they approach it?
There are solvability factors. There's information that can be vetted. If there's someone that needs to be interviewed or re-interviewed, certainly try to do that. Some cases, unfortunately, little to investigate, but I know at least in Essex County, there's an assistant district attorney assigned to unsolved cases, and I don't like to refer to them as cold. They're unsolved. They're always going to be active. And I know a state police investigator that's at least one that's assigned to these cases, and the local PDs will also be part of those investigations. So I've went to many meetings on these, done a lot of interviews, and I know, again, speaking for Essex County, they've solved a couple of cases recently with DNA technology, genetic DNA technology. So again, I just unfortunately don't have unlimited resources for these. That's no acceptable answer for a family member. All these cases are important and deserve attention and should be given the attention they deserve.
Do you think the squeaky wheel
Sorry.
gets the? Sorry, I'll let you go. So,
I feel like we should raise our hand.
This is a silly question, but I mean, do you think, as far as the district attorney is concerned, and even investigators, do you think the squeaky wheel sort of gets the grease? So if, per se, like say right now, this Facebook, this is getting pretty active and what's going on. And I think it's just common knowledge also that, like, all of a sudden, if the district attorney or people see people that something's getting media attention and things like that, they might go, all right, let's get what's going on with this. So do you recommend anything as far as like family members? And I know I don't want to put you on the spot as far as law enforcement, but obviously the family members that are calling more, do you think that actually gets any more traction in a case with investigators if people are loud and getting out there and in the media and all these things?
As far as traction, I think the attention is good because it's putting, again, the spotlight back on the case. It's bringing, again, younger investigators and members of the public who may not have been alive in 1992 developing an interest in the case and what's going on with this. And, family members have every right to go in and ask what's going on with the investigation. And, I've had folks call me frequently, and, at times I've had to tell them, we talked to this individual, we tried to do this and it's not working, but the case is still open, and I don't begrudge any family member for advocating the best they can for their family member.
And you said before there's victim you and I spoke about it, and they are assigned, I think, to cases, but maybe from older cases, maybe not so much. But you and I spoke about victim witness advocates for families, and how important is that?
It's important in the current cases because at the onset of a tragedy, a homicide, families have a lot of questions. They want to talk to the investigators. They want to talk to the DA. These folks are very busy with their investigations, and the victim witness advocate is extremely important. They're a conduit between the investigators, the district attorney, and the families, and can answer those rather than having phone messages left and things like that. It's, I think, a great resource that's been developed. I'm not sure if they're being assigned to older cases, but I don't see any reason why they can't be.
This is a random question. It's less to do with the case and more to do with just the policing. But you were saying like Lynn doesn't have a cold case or an unsolved. I know you didn't say, I'm not sure what to call it, but like they didn't have that specialized unit and you just kind of worked on it when you could because of the funding and stuff like that. Does that ever go to like outsource to other police agencies or other police forces or a different entity, or do they just literally sit until you can have the time to work on them?
So the jurisdiction on a homicide rests with the district attorney in the county where the crime was committed. So it's their responsibility. So it would be the local department in the county state police unit that would keep that in-house. It wouldn't be sent to another agency to do that. That's not to say that other out-of-state agencies and so forth couldn't be consulted during the investigation. That often happens, whether it's federal agencies or like I said, agencies outside of Massachusetts. I've driven up to Maine. I've been all over New England on unsolved cases.
I was just going to say, it seems like a perfect type thing for somebody in your position where you've had such a established and impressive lifelong career in law enforcement, and you're a lawyer as well, and whatever, and you're retired. I mean, it seems like a great little contract situation for somebody like you that has that experience, that would be able to go in and take a look at these cases that isn't bogged down with the day-to-day triple homicide that might happen down the street.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
They deserve to be. It's a full-time job looking at these cases because you do get entrenched with them. I know some agencies, some states, they do, again, either bring in retired law enforcement or different investigators to exclusively investigate cases and give them the resources with crime scene personnel and things like that. Unfortunately, our department being the size that it is, our detectives not only responsible for homicides, but all major crimes, whether it be robberies, shootings, burglaries. Time management is difficult, and it was my job as captain to keep the investigations on track on what we're doing with them and getting constant, I don't want to say constant, but timeline reports on what we're doing with these cases, just the active cases and the long-term cases.
So in this case, and I know you have a question too, and there's so many agencies that were involved in this case, then with the credit cards kind of intersecting and all of that. So when I speak with the lead investigator, and they speak about the FBI, so there's been 2 federal grand juries and a state grand jury, and so it's just so convoluted. So like the FBI is working the case, then MSP is working the case, and it's like it says it's they're active with the FBI, but it's active here. So are they just doing their own thing? Like, when do they come together? It just seems so strange. Like, does someone say, no, we're the lead, or and we're the assist? Like you just said, so if there's a homicide in Lynn, it's the district attorney, Mass State Police, but you're also the local PD are working with Mass State Police. How does it work when the FBI are involved?
So I'll give you a couple of recent examples, and I can't speak to what goes on other places or what went on decades ago. So when there's a homicide, typically a couple of weeks after it's called a protocol meeting, and the DA or the assistant district attorney who is overseeing the case chairs the meeting. All the investigators are brought in, crime scene services, ballistics unit, so forth, and you go through what's done and what needs to be done. So when there is outside information, there were 2 relevant cases in Lynn, both involved gang cases. One was MS-13 and one was Trinitarios, recently in the news. So there's going to be information that there may be a federal investigation involved in this too. So what should happen is that meetings will also include an assistant U.S. attorney, representatives from the agency, whether it be FBI, DEA, in the agencies, and a decision made on who's going to be the lead agency. So in our 2 cases with the Trinitarios, there were 6 homicides, 2 in Lynn, I believe 4 up in Lawrence. The FBI gang task force had an extensive investigation into the gang. They had undercover operatives, they had informants. they were in the best position to be able to prosecute this case under, it's called RICO,
Yeah.
with La Cosa Nostra. Again, it's an agreement between that the DA's office that the federal U.S. attorney is going to prosecute this case. That was done in with the RICO case. They were able to prosecute, I would say, a couple of dozen individuals. And with the RICO case for those 6 homicides, not only the persons who committed the homicides themselves, the leaders of the gang were taken down. So it has the biggest impact on the case itself. So even though the local district attorney deferred to the U.S. attorney, that was done. The prosecution was done to a bigger effect than just prosecuting those homicides individually.
So when they took it over, were you guys assisting, or did they just take it, the case? Because they were doing a lot of
We're
work.
still involved, and again, communication is key, leadership is key, frequent meetings on the status of the case, what's going on with it. So there's frequent meetings on what's going on with the case. Now, not homicide cases. I've seen other cases where deferred to other agencies and then nothing happens and it's tossed back to you, the local agency, which is not a good situation. Again, agreement on who's going to be the lead agency on this. Again, it can be investigated jointly, but prosecuted in the best forum possible. We see the case with the person who killed the United Health CEO. He was prosecuted federally for murder, but he's also being charged in the state of New York for murders. And there's some motions and court proceedings on whether it's double jeopardy, but he was prosecuted federally. So again, the communication on the prosecution and the investigation, and if multiple agencies or entities are investigating the case, you would want to meet and coordinate frequently. Number one, to avoid duplication of efforts, and to not presume that certain interviews and tasks were done when they weren't done. So you don't want to avoid the case where everybody's investigating but nobody's investigating. So,
This is eerily similar to healthcare. It's just, we talk about it all the time, but it's like so many doctors, it's the same, you can equate it the same way. So many doctors not
Right.
talking to each other, different medical records, I'm sure same way with police stations, different electronic records. You know, at least you guys meet and sit down and actually do have like some kind of planning. But yeah, a lot of assumptions.
Well, I don't know that they all do. I think he did. I wonder in a case now, do you think a case like this 34 years later?
Yeah, this was 92.
You think that they're actively, the FBI is meeting with MSP regularly? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I would have no idea on that. I'm not connected to the case.
Yeah,
so yeah, you would hope that
You would hope
that's occurring, and that would be coordinated. And I think coordination has been much better between federal, state agencies. Again, there was territorialism with agencies keeping everything in house, and again, individuals trying to get some type of credit for something that other agencies didn't. But just in my experience, everybody has a common goal of getting the best outcome. Again, justice for the victim, answers for the family, and getting the best prosecution. We had another case. It was MS-13. We had a young man who was murdered in a playground in Lynn, and he was actually a member of the gang and wanted to get out and was taken up to the woods by his friends and stabbed to death.
Oh.
So through the FBI again gang task force, which we had members on, we were able to again coordinate on that, prosecute the leaders of that gang for that murder.
That's great. Do you think Stu's case, so the credit cards were investigated by the postal inspector and then the Secret Service, okay? And then the FBI comes in, and then Revere Police is working with MSP in the murder, and then the FBI comes in. So the FBI, I'm assuming they're involved, and it seems like I'm speculating, but it seems like they might be looking for some RICO situation here with the credit cards and organized crime and things like that. But they're also investigating the murder. what triggered, do you think, the FBI to come in on this case? Like what could have triggered it? Just speculation, you don't know. But.
So I know where someone can be prosecuted federally for murder. It's very limited circumstances. I think the New York case, United Health, that was a political assassination, which would qualify as a predicate for that prosecution. But it also includes federal witnesses or potential witnesses. Now, I don't know, or we don't know that Sue was a witness, but she could have been a potential witness, I suppose, in this credit card case, that it was that close within the airlines. So that would give them some jurisdiction to investigate and to hold proceedings for the murder.
And that's a case, just like you said, though. So we know from when we went over Robert Brooks and the whole obstruction of justice, Sue, although they denied she's cooperating, because if she was murdered because they thought that she was, that can still be prosecuted federally, because she was murdered because they thought she was cooperating with the feds, even though she may not have been. So that could still be prosecuted federally.
Correct.
And then at the same time, just like the United Health case, the state can prosecute for murder as well. So both agencies can prosecute for murder. Is that correct?
It depends if there's a double jeopardy claim. The United case, he was convicted of murder. What we typically see in those cases, they're different offenses that they're charged with.
Okay.
Maybe a state murder case, but a federal civil rights case.
Okay.
So we've seen those with the officers up in Minnesota. One was convicted of homicide. One was convicted of civil rights, also convicted of civil rights violations. But it would have to be determined when we talk about different agencies involved. That should be or should have been coordinated by the U.S. Attorney's Office on these federal agencies. They would have the responsibility of directing these investigations. So there would be an assistant U.S. attorney, again, probably assigned to the credit card scheme. And if they're looping in the homicide, they would dictate how this investigation is going to go, not the individual. It shouldn't be the individual agencies acting independently.
Okay, that's good to know. So, but if you have MSP, they're working the case and they know, and I've been told that they're working with they're working with the FBI. It's still active with both agencies. If you have access on a case to the FBI, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's well understood that the FBI has lots more resources than state and local agencies in better DNA technology and all of that. So if you have access to the FBI and are still both working together, would you, as an investigator, feel comfortable asking the FBI for help as far as running the DNA again or looking at something, whatever, anything you need?
No, I know they'll do that. In fact, they've initiated assistance locally on these cases, and they're looking to assist on these cases. So where they're involved, not that they have better technology on DNA, but they also have that service that they can provide.
Okay.
They have more resources, so I think enhanced resources. But I think if you're looking at it locally, what can they bring to the table that we can't? And if there's something there, we can. If they have an informant, if they have an undercover operative that has access to information, you certainly utilize those.
How important is it in a case like this when you picked it up as an investigator later on in an unsolved case to re-interview the witnesses?
I think it's very, very important. When I look at a case, I'll first look at all the reports. I'll look at the initial report. I'll look at the investigator's report. I'll look at the autopsy report. I'll look at the crime scene photos. But in my experience, and I will many times call the investigators from 30-year-old cases, and these folks might be in their 70s or 80s, but they remember it like it's yesterday. So their reports, any written reports, are going to be summaries of interviews. So it's not going to include verbatim unless we have an audio recording. Today we have audio and video. But even with those, you're obtaining information after the fact that might be relevant. So you do want to interview them, and at least with family members, witnesses. I've got a lot more information from those interviews than was included in the reports. Hasn't been
Sure.
earth-shattering and led to solving the case, but it's led to doing other interviews.
Well, and imagine too, like if there's somebody that was interviewed that was really liked as a suspect, re-interviewing them 34 years later, their story, they may not remember exactly the details that they said the first or second or third time that they were looked at or interviewed. If it was 30 years ago, and maybe
Right.
circling back around, they may say something that conflicts with what they said before because there's been so much time between it that may
Right, and
lead
Right,
to.
and if there's memory issues, you can certainly refresh the memory with their statement and for accuracy, or if there's anything additional or any conflict. But yeah, those can be used if someone just say, "I don't remember anything about this." You can refresh their memory with their prior statement.
Not only that, re-interviewing some people, if they were involved in a crime or something, they're tired now. It's been 34 years. They're just
That's what I mean.
over their head. Or there's a girlfriend that at the time didn't want to say anything, but now she's like, "What? Oh my God, I should have said something." So re-interviewing, even I know starting the Facebook group, and a lot of people are speaking about little things that didn't say anything then because they were all scared it was organized crime and this and that, and now people are speaking a lot more now because it's 34 years removed. You know, a lot of these people are dead. They're not as afraid. Some still are, all of that. So without re-interviewing these people, you wouldn't get that. I think you could just get so much, you possibly can get so much more information shaking the tree.
Right.
That's what I meant.
It can be loyalties. Someone might be loyal to either friends or someone
Yeah.
romantically involved that's not anymore. That there may be fears. There may be other reasons why today. There may be empathy towards the family. They may have a daughter that was Sue's age. That could be them. That motivates them to provide information.
Right.
Things
And they may not, I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done.
they may think of things that were irrelevant at the time. That looking at your podcast and rethinking things that
Yeah.
I didn't say it because I didn't think it was important. Maybe it is. As an investigator, just tell me everything. I don't sort out what's important and what's not.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like Diane really pleads with people, like, and I'm sure she'll do it when we're closing. If you know something, it's time to come forward. It's been too long. And I think that's great. And people are, and we have a lot of people that call and do all that stuff. But then I think there's another element to people that just, no matter how many times you say that or they hear it, they've thought about it, but they're just not going to. So if they're approached and interviewed, they don't have the choice. It just is. Then there may be something that, that they can say that maybe they wanted to.
Well, they always have a choice. They can get in it. They don't have to talk.
Well, that's right. But they're in the presence and they're sitting in there and they're answering questions and maybe they'll feel more comfortable. Sometimes people are just not going to take the initiative to go out and do it on their own. And if they were interviewed maybe by law enforcement or whatever, they would say different things.
Yes and no. The grand jury process is used much more now in cases than maybe it was back then, even though there were grand jury proceedings. So someone that's maybe identified as having relevant information can be brought before the grand jury, and they don't, unless they have a Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, they don't have the right to say, "I'm not saying anything."
Yeah.
If they contend they do have a Fifth Amendment privilege, there's a hearing before a judge who determines whether they do or they don't. So they would have to give a statement and advised they lie, they can be prosecuted for perjury. This works very well in our gang cases where they take the option of, I'm a witness to this crime. I didn't have anything to do with it. So I'm not going to come in and lie and go to jail for perjury. I'm going to come in and tell the truth. Immunities can also be given, either full or partial immunities. So that process,
people don't know about statutes of limitations in addition to immunities.
Depending on what crime, again, that can be hashed out in a hearing before a judge if someone's contending they do have a Fifth Amendment privilege. I know one gang case where we had probably a dozen witnesses who contended they had a privilege, and it was all sorted through. At the end of the day, we got the testimony and we got the convictions on it.
I'm going to tell you in my personal experience in this case, I'm running into a little bit of this, and there are some people that have been involved in this case that have been grand juried. and obviously they state that they didn't have anything to do with it. They'd like it solved, whatever, that's to be determined. We don't know. Everyone's a suspect, correct? That no one's been really ruled out, but they'll question me when I want to speak with them about, I've already been grand juried. I'd like to see this case solved, etc. And they don't have a lot of information. So obviously when you as an officer, cop or investigator comes to the door, you're not going to give a suspect, you're trying to get information. You're not trying to give information, correct? I have the luxury of saying a lot more, doing this. I'm not the investigator on this case. I'm writing a book, just trying to obtain information, and hopefully with that would be great, get some answers. But where I can speak to a potential witness, potential suspect, whatever, and put some pieces together, because there's things that I know that they might, and then in talking back and forth, there might be some type of something that can come out of that. Whereas an investigator or talking to police, people do, let's face it, they do clam up, don't say anything. And obviously you're not sharing a lot. You're there. So I really do want to use that to encourage people that even talking to me just for the book, first of all, clear your name, make a statement just so it shows you were cooperative when the book comes out. But also, if you really are sincere about wanting this case solved and maybe wanting to put it behind you, I could speak with you, and maybe there's some information that might make sense that I could, because I know a lot from all of this, and then we could pass it on or whatever. But I'm just, from an investigative standpoint, when you're interviewing someone, you're not giving information, you're trying to get information. And sometimes you have to give a little to get a little. But I have a lot of people that want information from me, or I have used some information that I have to get information. And I want to be clear on the people that are reaching out to me. I'm sorry, I'm being long-winded. That talking to me can be helpful, I think, if that's sincerely what you want. And I think we could maybe put our heads together a little bit. There could be something that comes out of it.
Yeah, we've experienced that a lot. We bring a suspect in, whether in custody or not, and they want to know what you know.
Yeah.
And you got to use your investigative skills to shut that down. And if they're not going to tell you anything, they're not going to tell you anything. But you're not going to give them all the information you have. That's what they're looking for to help themselves. So that certainly does happen a lot. You're in a different position than investigator, who's technically the government. So if someone is a suspect and they're custodial interrogation, then they have to be given Miranda and have to waive their rights to that under those circumstances. And talking to an investigator, where you don't have to do that.
Yeah, we can just shoot the shit. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Exactly.
Why don't you tell us about? Can you tell us? So I know you told me you do have a passion for unsolved cases, and is there any, besides Sue, is there any unsolved cases that you've personally worked on that you could tell us about? Anything that's really, that you stay up at night, that you can't stop thinking about, or that you have a passion for?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. There was a missing child in 1996, Jesus de la Cruz. It was a large story. He went missing. Unfortunately, whoever took him had numerous hours of advance, and again, a ton of work is done on that case. Various news stories. He's never been recovered. His suspect's been identified, but can't tie him to the child.
Oh,
That's one of them. There's another missing child, Giovanni Gonzalez, in 2008, which he was likely killed by his father, but we recovered some DNA, but not his body. Although the father did give a prison statement to a reporter admitting he killed the child and where he disposed of his remains.
and they weren't able to find anything?
No, it was at the time we did numerous searches of dumpsters and places, but where he disposed of them were a distance away that wouldn't have been searched. He did a lot of jail time.
I think I remember that case.
Yeah.
And me too.
Yep. So again, there's the long-term missing person cases. There's several out there. The older cases. There was a 1979 case, Paula Kallenbach, who she was hitchhiking and went missing. It was a large news story. Found deceased in Swampscott, Salem, in several months later. I know we worked hard on that case, and I know they're still working on that case, but that's one that it's again solvable. I looked at a lot of these that were solvable and possible evidence on. There's some cases out there where we know who committed the crime, but we can't prove it.
I was going to ask you that. I don't know how you all that. I would have to be, I don't know. I would have to be in intense therapy and on medication. I don't know how you deal with that.
Knowing exactly who did it and where and how and why, and you just can't, the legal system does not mean it just because
awful.
it doesn't mean someone's going to be convicted or someone's going to, it's so
right. And it depends on eyewitness testimony. A lot of there was one, it was a store homicide. Store clerk was shot and killed, and I wasn't an investigator at the time, but we pretty much know who did it. But the store clerk was so terrified that wouldn't even look at the photos.
Oh, I just
sad.
No, I would have to. I joke with everyone I've talked to in this case, all the cops and everything. I'm always like, I would have to plant cocaine on the car or something.
All investigators who investigated homicides, and again, from our agency, from surrounding agencies, state police, I know they're up late at night and they'll wake up thinking of something with this case and want to get it solved.
I can't imagine, and I really have a newfound. I grew up in Revere, so, and you'll see my third book coming out. I've hung around with some bad guys when I was younger at a time, and the rule of thumb was you didn't talk to cops, and that's sort of how we grew up. And I have a whole new respect for. I mean, my grandfather was Boston PD, but that was years ago. But I have a whole new respect for law enforcement and all the guys that I've spoken with, and I'm saying men because I haven't spoken to any women yet in this particular case. But I have a newfound respect for you guys, honestly.
Thank you.
I just have one. I want to have one more question, and we got to wrap it up. But what's your opinion on exhuming a body for evidence? What do you need to get there?
Well, it was likely going to be a court order to exhume a body, and there have to be a showing that there's going to be possibly relevant evidence there to justify disturbing human remains.
Who gets that conversation going? Like, who did you?
And are there permissions from next of kin and things like that, or can a judge overrule even a next of kin's wishes, or like how does that?
Yeah, the judge can overrule that in the interest of justice.
Wow.
Families can. I mean, sometimes families will insist on this. In one case that stands out is Boston Strangler case.
Yeah.
Which there was a case in Lynn, 1962, was the second one likely committed by Albert DeSalvo. So I think back around 2008, there was a book written with cooperation from a family member that he wasn't the Boston Strangler.
I remember.
He was never convicted of those crimes. That victim's remains were exhumed. DNA was found. DeSalvo's body was exhumed, and it was confirmed that he was the killer.
Do you think that they did that because they wanted to put to rest all the questions about him being and I don't know how much the family, wasn't some of the family saying he wasn't or something?
Correct.
Like
the family
was that
the
who wrote
family
the book?
was in agreement with the author of the book that it was somebody else. So that was done again in the interest of justice.
Yeah, and that's a real unique case because I don't blame the family. The family, if that is the case, and your family's getting dragged through the mud for years from this infamous murderer. I understand them maybe going, hey, maybe it's not that, but then all of a sudden law enforcement going, wait a minute, let's shut this down, let's put this to bed, and let's see if he really is. But that's really interesting.
In cases where there's obviously sexual assault and so forth, that maybe that technology wasn't available, but I know it was recovered from that case from the early 60s. So that can be recovered. But there has to be a showing that what evidence you're looking for, or more than just we want to process this body for DNA. It's got to be a better showing than that.
I mean, with all of this, I mean, I definitely think, this case is all coming up all over the place, 40 years old, 50 years old, 20 years old that are getting solved. So I think we definitely have a shot with Sue. And I really believe that there's things happening and something's going to happen and we're going to get some answers and hopefully justice. And there is already a lot of answers and a lot of things that are there. It's just getting justice and having answers are two different things. So unfortunately,
right.
But, anything else, Carrie, for Mark?
No, thank you, Mark, for coming on. Thank you for listening to our questions. Hopefully you'll come on again. I think it was really nice to hear from you and your perspective. And I hope they do contract positions for people like you, because it seems like that's such a huge asset. It would be, I mean, I think consultants like that would just, I know the funding is the issue, isn't it always?
I mean,
but
not just myself, but every day there are decades of experience walking out the door that we're going out to the golf course, but we've got all this experience.
Yeah, but you go out to the golf course and you think that's
and you
what
talk
you want.
shop.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say you think that's what you want, but you realize too, after being like in this field or with anything for so long, and you're so used to it, you have an urge to get back to it. Maybe not 50, 60, 70 hours a week, but maybe 20.
Yep, I think there's something you can contribute to give back. And I contacted an investigator from the this Boston Strangler case from 1962. He's since passed, but he remembered it like it was yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And they're appreciative that you're still following up on these cases.
Yeah, it's amazing.
No,
it's good to hear good policing.
We need task force in every state, all these retired guys just coming together.
Right. It has happened. The West Coast is a little bit more advanced with things, but I think the more advanced you'll see more units, whether it's countywide, with investigators, with these decades of experience that can still contribute something, give something back. That certainly have a foreign an interest in, and they did every day for again decades.
Yeah, it's great. Well,
thank you, Mark.
Okay.
I'll be talking to you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mark O'Toole, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Wow, it's just crazy the level of, between Joe and I know I haven't spoken to Sean much, but with Sean and then with Nunzio and then now Mark, it's crazy. Like you said, there's just
behind the scenes. I have a bunch of people I talk to too.
I know you
federal
do.
source. Bob Murphy's.
Bob Murphy. It's like you said, it's decades of experience just walking around out there. It's great that they're willing to come in and talk about this too.
And it's in their blood. They can't even. The stuff that when I'm with them and they talk or they say, it's just in their blood and it's just second nature. Yeah. So really to utilize, and like every other career or profession, sometimes I think, and then I'm not going to put down men, but I will put down men for a minute. But it's a male dominated profession pretty much. I think there's with the agencies and then there's egos too. And then, and I understand it must be hard when you're a investigator working a case and say you had this amazing investigator that has picked it up and you didn't solve it. And he's got that your ego is going to feel away. I mean, that's just normal.
The common denominator is just sharing that and getting justice with the family. But I wish there was
these guys,
couple women involved in this case. A couple women. There were no women officers at the. Not that there were no involved in this case.
Mass State Police. Bob Murphy worked with. Her name's Jenny. She worked with her.
Oh, that's right.
That's
right. Yeah, I remember hearing about Jenny. I'd love to hear a female perspective on it. We haven't yet.
I know we should have someone on because I would too. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd like to see their approach with certain suspects and bad guys and things like that. And
the differences in what we've heard so far and the contrast between all the guys that we've spoken to and what it's like from a female perspective. It's always good to hear the different.
I'll tell you one thing though. Everyone I've talked to in this, they don't really give a shit about getting recognition or
they have the same common interests. They want it solved.
They want Marlene to have peace and the case solved. And it's really nice to see because so many people, like a big case like this, you could be like, well, I could solve this and get the recognition and stuff. And maybe could they be lying? Sure, but they really don't seem to be. They seem very authentic.
There's probably more of that back in the day than there is now. With all the different agencies involved and whatnot, but maybe.
And just like I don't want to say, just like in any profession, I'm sure there's tons of cops who retire and go, thank fucking God, I hate this job. Like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
And even though, but in my experience, all these guys that I've talked to, I think they're obviously over some aspects of it, like all of us, and are pissed off that they were hindered or restrained in certain things and all that. But these are cops. These are like cops. These are at heart. Like they are, and it's really cool. And I'm jealous because I want to be like, I am an investigator. I'm jealous. I want to be deputized.
And I will deputize you, and I will take a back seat to that, and I never want to do any of that. I just want to sit here and ask questions as the representative of the lay people of America.
Oh, I love
who
it.
Are wondering
I just love just being like, aha, I got you. Like, I just live for it. Like,
You're just in the wrong profession.
Yeah, I should have never
in
been
the wrong
there.
profession.
Like,
Well, you can't be a cop and be taught to not talk to cops. That's the problem. Is if you grew up elsewhere where cops were an acceptable part of society, like we didn't grow up. We were taught we don't, like we just said to Mark, like we don't talk to cops generally.
I think it's healthy though, because it makes me suspect, and I just, your brain's always going.
Well, it
this
is
way.
now, but you missed like your youth, like going.
I
into
miss
it
being
when
a
you
cop.
Yeah.
I almost went to the
or an
military.
investigator or an FBI, or I don't think you'd be a beat cop, but I think you'd be like some kind of cop, like that.
Oh,
like
I'm going to be head of the FBI. I am head of the FBI.
Criminal proceedings or whatever.
No, you have to be a beat cop first, and then go whatever. Well, do you remember
I don't know if you have a beat cop in you. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if you could be a beat cop.
I can't tell. Well, I back in my 20s, but then I'd probably be dating.
Hold your own,
I'd
but
be dating all the guys. I'd be dating them.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. You're arresting a suspect. You're like, never mind. Let's just go by my house. We'll have a couple beers.
I'm like, are you wearing a tracksuit and a wife beater, and you just run?
Do you have an ankle bracelet on? Does anybody know where you are? Yeah, same. Not.
Yeah, I don't know that I could arrest them. I'd be too. And then we're going off on a tangent. And then I arrest them, and all of a sudden that makes it more attractive. That's all sick. That's sick.
So you just have 10 boyfriends. They're all your callers.
No, then I lose my badge. I'm in jail now. Now I'm in jail.
It's a good book, though.
Yeah, maybe
that's your next book.
I think in my 30s. Remember, I found later on in the FBI, I had no idea, and had I known this, they look for federal FBI agents that are nurses or EMTs, and you go to the training, and then you have to go by a certain age. And had I known that, I 100% would have done that. I had no idea.
I know you would have, and that's what I'm saying too. Like, I think if we didn't grow up so jaded in the areas that we grew up, where it was just not really cool to. We don't talk to the police, in the words of
and you date normal people, and
then you may have had an opportunity to become, to go down this career path. Unfortunately for you, it didn't happen. But I see a different light if the butterfly effect hadn't taken place.
Revere, come on. I love being from Revere, but now I'm aggravated.
Now you're mad at it. Yeah.
I should be from Concord, Lexington.
God, don't get me started. All right. On that note, anyway. So is Mark coming to the vigil?
Yep, Mark's coming to the vigil. I think all the investigators that I've been talking to are coming to the vigil, and so
it's a great place for people to meet everybody that we've had on, all the celebrities that we've had on our show.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It'd be a really interesting cast of characters, and let's see who else.
And then we're going to go out for your birthday after.
Yeah, I mean, I feel odd celebrating my birthday on Susan.
Well, I think I started that, so it has nothing to do with you. I think everybody's appreciative of what the work you're putting into what you're doing for Sue. We can take 5 minutes to celebrate your birthday. I mean,
no, we'll raise a glass for Sue for sure.
Absolutely.
And the band of cast of characters can come, whatever.
Yeah, I hope we'll probably end up. Well, you and I will end up.
I hope we survive.
Yeah, we'll end up arrested, but it's fine.
At this point, whatever.
Please, it'll be the best night they've ever had.
It's Saturday, September 12th, 12 o'clock, Constitution Beach, East Boston. Be there, and you'll see we have to find a podium. I'm probably gonna have to buy one, but whatever. But media.
Shout out if anybody has a podium hanging around their house.
Yeah, if anyone has a podium, that would be fabulous. I already have a tent, and we have all the things that we need. So
We have a
that'll be
mic
great.
system, like an MC, like a mic system.
Yeah,
or
we have all
whatever
that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll probably
so just
I'll
the
probably use
podium is the last thing.
just a podium, which that'll be fine. So I'll be sending out all the media and the press kit and all that stuff in the coming weeks. And more information to follow. Please be there. Like, subscribe to the channel. Keep Sue's name out there. Talk about it. Share it. Sue Taraskiewicz. We are not letting this go. Let's go, everybody. Massachusetts, North Shore. Let's do this.
If you are watching this right now, please click the like button. It just, boop, that's it. Just click the like button, please. If it helps the whole entire cause. So if I see the numbers not matching up with the likes versus the views,
They're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Okay.
Trouble.
All right, we'll yell at you at the vigil. Carrie will yell at you at the vigil.
I will.
All right, bye guys.
All right,
Be
well,
honest. Tune in next Friday.
Cheers to Sue and
Cheers
staying
to Sue
alive.
and staying alive. Bye.
Bye.